What about Greg Newsome and Mike Hall? Just kind of thoughts on those two. And Newsome, they're
Yeah.
paying him a lot of money that they picked up that fifth-year rookie option.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to give up on corners, when you take them in the first round. It's just really challenging. Unless they're absolutely proven that they can't play, it's likely they're going to get that fifth year option picked up. Now, the question for Newsome is like, where's the value versus what they're asking him to do? Right. So he's an inside guy in the last 3 years. Now, when he arrived in the league his first year, and this feels crazy to think that Greg Newsome has been around 4 years, but that's the case. He was an outside corner predominantly at Northwestern, and he comes in and he plays outside corner here his first year. And I thought there were some really promising moments. I think based on body type and a desired physicality, that's the location that makes the most sense for me for him. They draft Martin Emerson the next year. They feel like he's an outside guy predominantly because he can't really doesn't have the shiftiness to play inside. And in the first year of a system between Newsome's shift inside and Emerson playing outside, in what Joe Woods used to do, which was a more dense zone defense approach, he thrived. Emerson thrived. Newsome was adjusting to a new role, had some nice moments. Then you bring in Jim Schwartz, who's more of a man coverage guy, and that's not, especially against the twitchier receivers, a thing that Emerson is able to consistently win because he's a bigger body type who doesn't have the quickest hips in the world. So, I think the last 2 years decline in terms of what we thought he could be based on his rookie year versus what he was. And you started to see defenses, or sorry, excuse me, opposing offenses figure out how to pick on him. It's tricky. I think that, like, for me, you're in this big transition period for a lot of names on this roster trying to prove if they're long-term worthy. And I find myself really being interested in what does a Greg Newsome relationship look like beyond this year? Well, is that a slot corner role? I don't think he's best fit for that because I don't think he likes to play physical football, and I don't think he's as good in there as he could be versus maybe some other. And again, this has always been an NFL position at slot corner that you could really find that cheaper player. So it's harder to find outside corners. I would prefer, just me, to see if this final year, if there's more of a successful outside corner player for Newsome, and that's how you extend the relationship into some sort of manageable second contract. Whereas I think inside, I just think that's ultimately he's playing a very replaceable brand of football on the inside. So I just, again, one guy behind the screen here, but I feel like that's the place I would be most curious for Newsome is playing predominantly outside, whereas the last 3 years he's played inside. And while he's not bad, I would not put him as an awful player there. I just feel like his skill set is best suited outside, and you can find and figure out some different ways to get players who can play in the slot. I think that's been proven over years of the NFL. I mean, even a guy like Mike Hilton, who's sitting there in free agency still, is a guy who's had a lot of success. So that's where I'm like kind of raising my eyebrow and tree because as far as what Jim Schwartz runs, the Martin Emerson connection is it just I don't ever think it's going to be as good as if it was a more dense zone defense. Like think of Richard Sherman, and I'm not saying Martin Emerson is Richard Sherman, but that type of player. Those Seattle teams lived in cover three. He was an excellent cover three zone corner who could play with range and anticipation from an off alignment. That's more of what Emerson's good at. He can match bigger body receivers with that sort of stuff. But when offenses figure out how to get him aligned where they want to get him aligned, and they put those twitchy or quick hips wide receiver types against him. Think of like what happened against Malik Neighbors last year. That's when you run into some real issues there. So, yeah, if offenses are dictating decision making with defense, it's not a place that you want to be in. So I just would be interested in, hey, we had this first round pick. We tried it for a few years with Emerson inside, or sorry, with Newsome playing predominantly inside. And even there was a time where he wanted to be traded, but you work it out, solve it. Let's see if he can play outside a bit more, and then you solve that issue, maybe having a couple outside corners, and you maybe get a relatively functional deal on that. So I that's a spot I'm interested in. As far as Mike Hall goes, it was more just a lingering question about we haven't heard much.
Yep.
The MCL tear, from everything I gather, he is very much on track to be ready to go by the beginning of the season. Hopefully week one. He'll probably start the year here in training camp on maybe the pup list or working on the side. Maybe he avoids putt, but he's working on the side. I just don't think you're going to see a ton of him in preseason until maybe the final week or so, and hopefully they have him ramped up and ready to go by the start of week 1. But that's the timeline I've heard. So on track there.